ready to go?
You lead the way. I'll follow.
As promised, Destin Legary is here to tell us everything that we know so far about Anthem.
Yeah.
Destin, take it away.
All right, so Anthem, it was going to launch in the fall, but they actually decided to hold it a little bit. They're going to launch in the spring of 2019. And I am super excited about this game. It deals with javelins, which are basically like an Iron Man kind of suit that you can wear. And there's a few that we know of, and I have them here in my extensive notes.
So you have so many
all
notes
about
this
Anthem.
game.
There's the Ranger and the Colossus. The Ranger is an all-around balanced character. It has a multi-target missile volley. It has a shotgun, a scope zoom, and the Colossus is a heavy armored tank. And we saw this during the E3 demo last year. So
That totally real player chat.
Yes.
Real players actually talking about real stuff, definitely not fake. So these these javelins are archetypal. They're basically analogous to a class in Destiny.
Correct.
The Guardian class. And the third one we don't really know.
It looks like sort of like a maze, like
a
you sort of have
caster.
mystical
Sure.
abilities of some sort. We're not really sure though.
So is this open world? What's the deal with the environment?
Yeah, so I mean, there's enemies out there, and you fight the Scar, which are these sort of beasts, or at least that's what we know about so far. There's also a tower-like area where you can actually interact with other characters. It looks like that section is going to be in first person, where you sort of have dialogue moments with other characters in that world, and that's where you get your missions and quests, and then you go on your javelin to help out people in that location.
So important distinction, it is a third-person shooter when you're out in the world, but when you are back at that, for lack of a better word, home base, you're in first person, and that's kind of the classic BioWare dialogue options.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
So talk to me about the story, what we know, who we know is behind it, that kind of stuff.
So what we know about the story, it's a little weird. They're saying it's a genre we call science fantasy. This is from the creators of games like Mass Effect and Knights of the Old Republic, of course. And at one time, Drew Karpyshyn had signed on at E3 last year, but he has since decided to leave and pass it along to the next person. So storytelling-wise, I'm still hopeful that we get a good narrative. Based on what we saw in the tower, it seems like the facial animations are really cool and it's really immersive. But I don't know much more about what to expect.
We saw this amazing open world that you can fly through. Talk to me about the world.
Yeah, so all we really know is that it is going to be a continuous open world that is ever changing. That's actually from an EA investor call. And that's really, really intriguing to me. There's this guy, Brennan Holmes, who's been posting a ton on the Anthem subreddit just about systems and how they're working on like getting rid of loading screens and such so that you kind of can have a continuous experience when you're out in the world.
And ever-changing is really interesting because that's akin to something more like EVE Online, and the reason that that is ever-changing is because players are interacting with it and claiming space. But for these linear, we'll call them theme park MMOs or shared world shooters, for lack of a better word, generally there are static spawns and static areas. So when they say ever-changing, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it might be based on the quests that you get or something from the people in the tower-like area. There are also the Shaper Storms that occur, which we're thinking are going to be like dungeons or strikes in Destiny or maybe a raid-like encounter. I'm not sure. That seems like something that they would save for later.
And the name of Shaper Storm, I think, would imply that maybe that is shaping the world and that is potentially the source of it being ever-changing. So EA is publishing this, and I think a lot of people are down on EA recently after Battlefront 2, after the microtransaction controversy, and I think a lot of the feedback I see on YouTube comments whenever we post anything about Anthem is like, it's going to be ruined by microtransactions. Have BioWare said anything on that point?
Yeah, addressing concerns about EA, Brennan actually said in their day-to-day work, the larger organization isn't really involved. That's all internal. We have our goals and priorities, and we're working towards those. So it sounds like EA has been fairly hands-off, and EA said something along the lines of kind of letting them do their thing. Obviously, they have their goals for the franchise and letting Edmonton work on it. But it seems like they know that they can't have another Star Wars, basically. And they don't want that to happen. So they want to just sort of let them have their creative freedom, but they're still trying to hit these goals. They've already let them delay to Q1 2019. So that's, to me, that's good because we're going to get a better product.
Do we know anything about PvP?
I don't know if they've mentioned anything about that off the top of my head, but how would that even work with other javelins?
Well, I think it could be fun. I think there could be a lot of like mid-air Quake-style gameplay, which is a lot higher skill cap. Obviously, the skills of the Javelin could come into play, but it is definitely a choice when you choose to have something like PvP in your game, because you really have to support it, and it does take a lot of your resources.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think it provides a pretty nice tail on the end of a game. All right, something that I wanted to touch on was a Reddit comment that I think is something Destiny 2 desperately needs, is a PTR, and they were saying they might have a PTR.
Yeah, it's something that they're pretty interested in. We're still working out a lot of the details, but I'll make sure I bring it up in our next sync. So it's something they are discussing internally. I would love a PTR for games like this, because like you can introduce one weapon and then that weapon's just the meta because it breaks something, like a heavy ammo glitch or something that they have to get out of there, or a weapon that's just way too powerful so everybody uses it in PvP if it has something like that at launch.
So if you could speak to the folks developing the game at BioWare right now and give them 2 or 3 tips that you think are essential to having this game not only be initially successful, but also have a very high concurrent player base for a long time after launch, what would those be?
Yeah, so don't make a convoluted leveling system. I think that's really, really important. Just make it clear that here's how you progress in our game. Continue focusing on the story and the narrative. And people love lore, and if you give them lore to dive into, and consider people smarter than you might give them credit for.
Sure.
Like, we can figure out systems. Look at Monster Hunter. Look how successful that game was before. It's because it had sets and set bonuses and all these little perks that you can min-max your damage. I love that stuff in a game like that. And if Anthem has that sort of progression path, it's going to crush.
I agree. I think the initial progression path should be completely intuitive, but then the minutia and changing your builds around, that kind of stuff I think should have all these little bits that you can dig into. But again, I think if you kill something challenging, you should get a good reward for it.
Definitely.
And I feel like that shouldn't be bottlenecked in terms of progression. That's something that I'm running into Destiny 2 right now and having a really difficult time with.
For me, just based on the footage we saw, the gameplay loop looks like it's there. I hope it's enjoyable when we get our hands-on time with it. Yeah, so like if you nail that, it looks like there's lore in the world with the storytelling. You know, having a writer like Drew Karpyshyn gave me a lot of confidence. So when he left, I was actually a little concerned about that. And there have been a few departures.
Yeah, the lead animator as well, right?
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned, like why are these people coming on and bailing? Is it just too ambitious, or are they too far along?
It could be a corporate culture thing. I think when you see those upper level folks, especially ones who have been with like BioWare for a very long time, it is concerning, so maybe we won't know. So when will we see more Anthem?
Definitely E3 this year.
All right, this has been Destin Legary. He's one of our Anthem experts. He'll be back to talk about the Division 2, but in the meantime, we're going to have Stephen Rue jump in and play some Destiny 2. Let's take a look at some of our favorite moments from that gameplay that we have seen of Anthem thus far.
Hang in there. Almost there.
Okay, I'll get this round.
Thanks.